You moved cities, changed jobs, deleted old photos, even tried new relationships. But sometimes, in the quietest moments, a name still floats into your mind, like a shadow that never fully fades. Not because you want it to, not because you still hope, but because something inside you hasn't been released yet. This isn't nostalgia. This isn't missing someone. It's something deeper. Emotional bonds, spiritual attachments, those unseen threads that don't disappear just because time passed. They linger in your nervous system, in your reactions, in the spaces where you still feel unseen. You tell people you're over it, but your heart doesn't speak the same language as your mouth. Your soul remembers what your mind wants to forget. Maybe it's not that you loved them more. Maybe it's that the experience touched parts of you you didn't even know existed. Your identity, your fear of abandonment, your deepest longing to be truly seen. Some things don't fade with distance. They stay in the silence, in the pauses between breaths, in the spaces words never reach. And you wonder, why is this still here? Why does it still matter? But what if the very thing you think you left behind is actually the key to understanding who you really are? Tell me, have you ever felt like someone still lives inside your silence? What never really left? You thought it was over, and on the surface, it was. You deleted the photos, blocked the number, moved on, or at least that's what you told yourself. But healing isn't always loud, and neither is the pain that stays when the story ends without closure. Sometimes healing looks like progress on the outside, while your soul still sits in a room it never left. Have you ever caught yourself reacting to something small, a phrase, a look, a feeling, and suddenly you're somewhere else? Back with someone else? Back in the version of you that was still waiting to be chosen? That's not weakness. It's memory. Not in the brain, but in the soul. Emotional bonds don't break with logic. You don't just wake up one day and forget the way someone made you feel seen, or the way they made you feel disposable. Some ties are formed in silence, in longing, in wounds, and they root themselves so deeply, you forget what life felt like before they existed. It's not about wanting them back. It's not about regret. It's about a part of you that stayed behind, waiting for a different ending, a better version of the goodbye, an explanation that never came. But what if that part of you isn't broken? What if it's sacred? What if it's not calling you back to a person, but calling you back to yourself? You don't have to go back, but you do have to listen, because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about facing what your soul never got to finish. Have you ever felt like you're still holding hands with someone, even after they've let go? Where the first tie was formed. You may not remember the moment, but your soul does. It remembers the silence, the room full of people where no one really looked at you, the crying that no one heard, the version of you that learned way too early. If I want to be loved, I need to become what they need. That's where the first tie was formed, not with a person, but with a belief. The belief that love is earned, that you have to shrink to be accepted, that your needs make you too much, that your presence has to be useful to have value. Before anyone broke your heart, someone broke your foundation. Sometimes it wasn't cruel. It was just absence. Emotionally unavailable parents, busy caregivers, a home full of rules but low on tenderness. But the effect is the same. You became hyper-aware, tuned into everyone's emotions but your own, reading the room like your safety depended on it, because maybe it did. You grew up, but the child didn't disappear. She stayed. He waited, still longing to be chosen, not for what they could give, but simply for who they are. And that's the child who keeps choosing for you. That's the soul bond still whispering, "Don't leave. Maybe this time I'll be enough." But God says something different. In Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Before they ignored you, He saw you. Before they rejected you, He chose you." You weren't made to earn love. You were made from love. But when no one told you that, you spent your whole life trying to prove what was already true. Do you ever feel like you're still trying to be enough for people who never saw you in the first place?
When love starts to hurt. Not all pain feels like pain at first. Sometimes it feels like butterflies, like passion, like finally being noticed. But look closer, and you'll see it's not love. It's your wound finding something familiar. Her name was Mia. She was strong, independent, but always falling for the same kind of man. Emotionally distant, hot and cold. The kind who showed up just enough to keep her hoping, but never enough to make her feel safe. And every time he pulled away, she pulled harder. Not because she didn't know better, but because something in her still believed, if I fight hard enough, they'll stay. That wasn't love. That was her childhood repeating itself. When you grow up craving love you didn't get, you learn to settle for attention that hurts. You call it chemistry. You say it's meant to be. But deep down, you know it's not. You're just bonded to the pain, to the drama, to the feeling of chasing someone, because being chosen feels too unfamiliar to trust. Jeremiah 17:9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things. Who can understand it?" Your heart doesn't always lead you toward healing. Sometimes it leads you back to what's comfortable, even if it's slowly breaking you. And yet, you stay. Because leaving would mean facing what you've tried to avoid, that maybe you've never truly experienced real, safe, steady love. So you hold on, hoping the chaos will settle, hoping you can fix it, hoping this time it'll finally feel like enough. But here's the truth no one says out loud. If love costs you your peace, your dignity, your voice, it's not love, it's a wound disguised as one. Have you ever stayed longer than you should? Not because you were happy, but because you were scared to start over.
When your wounds choose for you. You think you're in control. You think you're choosing the relationship, the person, the pattern, the timing. But what if it's not you choosing? What if it's your wound? Because when your soul is hungry, not just for affection, but for recognition, you don't reach for what's healthy. You reach for what's familiar. And for someone raised on emotional silence, rejection feels like home. We don't always chase love. Sometimes we chase the feeling of being almost enough, because that's what our nervous system remembers. And so, you stay in situations where you're breadcrumbed. You feel seen just enough to stay, but never enough to heal. You take crumbs and call it a feast. And when someone offers you a full table, you get uncomfortable, suspicious, because your soul has never known what it's like to feel full. So you keep eating what doesn't satisfy, loving who doesn't love back, hoping that this time, it will finally be enough to prove you're worth staying for. But the truth? A hungry heart can't make healthy choices. The emptiness speaks louder than your logic. And without healing, you will always crave what you think you deserve, instead of what you were made for. You weren't created to fight for scraps. You were created to live in overflow. But when you've never known that kind of love, even toxicity feels like affection. It's not your fault, but it is your healing to claim. Have you ever stayed somewhere just because your heart was starving and anything felt better than the emptiness?
The silent soul. You laugh at the right moments. You say, "I'm good," when people ask. You show up, you perform, you hold it together. But when you're finally alone, something cracks, and you feel it. That slow ache behind your ribs, the weight you can't name, but it's always there. Not all pain screams. Some pain whispers. It hides behind achievement, behind the strong one persona, behind the mask that says, "I've moved on." You've become so good at pretending that even you believe it sometimes. But then it shows up in the way you flinch when someone gets too close, in the way your chest tightens for no reason, in the overthinking, the random anger, the deep loneliness, even in a crowded room. That's not weakness. That's unspoken pain. That's your inner child, still waiting to be heard, still wondering if anyone will ever choose them, not because they're useful, but because they exist. You've mastered survival, but survival isn't the same as peace. You're not broken, you're burdened, and pretending you're fine only makes the weight heavier. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, "People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." God sees what no one else can. The nights you cry into your pillow, the battles no one knows you're fighting, the strength it takes to just get out of bed. And He's not disappointed. He's near, because you were never meant to carry this alone. Have you ever smiled so much you forgot what your real face looks like underneath it all?
Why you can't forget them. You've deleted the messages, changed your number. You've cried, healed, moved on. At least that's what you told yourself. But then, a song plays. A scent drifts by. Someone laughs like they used to. And suddenly, you're right back there. Why? Why does a memory still pull so hard? Why does your chest tighten when you hear their name, even if you don't want them anymore? It's not about missing them. It's about what they represented, what they awakened in you, what they attached themselves to, your need to be chosen, your fear of being abandoned, your longing to be known. That kind of attachment isn't just emotional, it's spiritual, a soul-level bond that logic can't untie. Song of Songs 8:7 says, "Many waters cannot quench love, rivers cannot wash it away." You didn't just fall for a person, you tied your identity to a feeling, to the moment they made you feel whole, to the illusion that someone finally saw you and didn't walk away. But when that ends abruptly, without closure, without truth, without safety, your soul gets stuck in an emotional echo, looping through the same longing, trying to finish a sentence that was never spoken. It's not just them you can't forget. It's the version of you that felt alive in their presence. But here's the truth. If they were truly meant to stay, your soul wouldn't feel so divided in their absence. And maybe, just maybe, what your soul is clinging to is not the person, but the wound they left open. Do you ever wonder if you're haunted by a memory or by the part of yourself you lost in it? When your body moves on, but your soul stays. You changed cities, started fresh, got into new routines, new circles, maybe even a new relationship. And still, there's a part of you that feels like it never left, like your soul is sitting in the corner of some old memory, quiet, forgotten, waiting. Moving on doesn't always mean you've healed. Sometimes it just means you've learned how to function while still wounded. You keep going, because what choice do you have? But if someone looked close enough, they'd see it. The tiredness in your eyes that rest can't touch. The way certain dates on the calendar feel heavier. The way you smile through conversations, but go quiet in the moments that matter most. Your body walks into new rooms, but your heart is still facing a door that never opened. Still listening for a voice that never came back. Still hoping that maybe someone will notice that you're still there. But they don't. because you got so good at pretending to be okay that even you forgot what healing actually feels like. Real freedom isn't about distance. It's about release. It's about going back, finding that part of you left behind, and saying, "You can come with me now. You don't have to wait here anymore." Because there's more for you. More than replaying the same ending. More than dragging your past into every future moment. More than surviving in places your spirit outgrew. Healing starts when you realize you don't have to keep living in emotional rooms you've already outgrown. Have you ever felt like part of you is still living in a goodbye that happened years ago? The unseen battle. There's a version of you that knows what's right, knows what's healthy, knows what peace feels like, or at least what it should. But there's another version, one that still craves the familiar, even when it hurts, even when it breaks you, even when it keeps you stuck. And you feel it, that pull between freedom and fear, between moving forward and holding on, between what you know and what you still feel. It's not confusion, it's conflict. Romans 7:19 says, "For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing." You want to let go. You want to stop reaching out. You want to stop answering texts you know you shouldn't. You want to stop replaying memories that don't serve your healing. And yet, you do. Because the soul doesn't always obey truth. It obeys familiarity, even if that familiarity is chaos. You're not weak. You're wounded. And wounded people don't always want to be whole, because wholeness means losing the story they've wrapped themselves in for years. And still, your spirit whispers, there's more than this. There's freedom. There's rest. You don't have to keep living like this. But it's not easy. There's no switch to flip, just a slow, sacred process of choosing truth even when your feelings disagree. You're not just fighting temptation. You're fighting the version of you that still thinks love has to be earned through suffering. Do you feel that war inside too? The one no one sees, but that's draining you more than anything else?
When you forget who you are, you didn't even notice it at first. The small ways you bent yourself to fit, the things you stopped saying, the parts of you started hiding, all just to keep someone from leaving. Little by little, you became unrecognizable, not to others, to yourself. You used to have a voice, a light, a softness that felt safe inside your own skin. But somewhere along the way, you learned that love meant shrinking, agreeing, surviving. And so you put on a version of you that was easier to accept, more likable, less messy, more worthy. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You don't recognize yourself anymore. And the scariest part, you're not even sure how to get back. You don't remember what joy felt like without conditions. You don't remember what it's like to not second-guess your every word. You've spent so long proving your worth that you forgot you already had it. 1 Peter 2:9 says, "You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." You weren't made to be tolerated. You were made to be cherished, seen, known, without performance. But when identity gets wrapped in survival, even love starts to feel like pressure. And that's not who you are. That's just who you became to avoid pain. But the real you, the you that God handcrafted, is still there, not lost, just buried. Under the fear, under the silence, under the belief that you had to earn what was always supposed to be given freely. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like you're standing in front of a stranger, one you created just to feel safe? The lie of unworthiness. It's subtle. You don't say it out loud, but it lives in the choices you make, in the people you chase, in the love you settle for. The belief, maybe I just don't deserve more than this. You've been so used to getting pieces, fragments of affection, half promises, words without actions, that full, healthy love makes you uncomfortable. You question it, sabotage it,
run from it. Not because you don't want it, but because deep down, you're not sure you're allowed to have it. And so you stay in places where you give more than you receive. You convince yourself that emotional inconsistency is passion, that jealousy is love, that walking on eggshells is just the way things are. But here's the truth. Your wounds lied to you. They taught you that love is conditional, that to be wanted, you have to prove your worth, that affection is a reward, not a right. But God never loved like that. You weren't made to survive love. You were made to bloom in it. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do good works." A masterpiece, not a backup plan, not someone to be tolerated or fixed or almost loved. A masterpiece. But when your soul is used to being treated like a placeholder, you start to believe you are one. So here's your reminder. You were never too much, too complicated, too broken. You were just in environments that couldn't hold the fullness of who you are. That's not on you, but the healing, the choosing better, that's yours now. Do you still believe love is something you have to earn, or are you ready to receive it the way God always intended?
The truth that sets you free. There's a moment, quiet, still, and deeply honest, when you can no longer pretend, when the distractions stop working, when the excuses feel hollow, when the mask becomes too heavy to wear. It's the moment truth shows up, not to shame you, not to expose you, but to rescue you. Because healing doesn't begin with comfort. It begins with confrontation, the kind that says, "This is what happened. This is how it broke you. And this is what you've been building your identity around ever since." It's uncomfortable. It can feel like loss. Like the version of yourself you protected all this time is unraveling. But listen closely. What's unraveling is not you. It's the lie. John 8:32 says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." But here's the part no one talks about. Before truth sets you free, it breaks your illusion. It pulls back the curtain. It shows you how you've been clinging to people who never saw you. How you called chaos love, because it's all you've known. How your fear of being alone made you stay in places that crushed your spirit. And it hurts, but it also opens the door. Because once you see the lie, you can't unsee it. And once you know the truth, you can begin to choose differently. Not overnight, not perfectly, but intentionally. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to stop pretending you're not hurting. That's where healing begins. Have you ever felt that sting of truth? Not to destroy you, but to finally set you free?
Forgiveness isn't about them. You've waited for the apology, the explanation, the closure. Maybe you told yourself, when they finally admit what they did, then I'll let this go. But what if they never do? What if the apology never comes? What if they moved on while you're still carrying the weight? Here's the truth. You don't need them to set you free. Because forgiveness isn't about erasing the pain. It's about untying the knot that keeps you bound to it. It's not saying, what you did was okay. It's saying, I won't let it define me anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means you're ready to stop reliving it. Over and over. Every time their name comes up. Every time the memory replays like a film in your chest. You're not freeing them. You're freeing yourself. Because your soul was never designed to carry this much anger, this much tension, this much unspoken grief. Colossians 3:13 says, "Forgive as the Lord forgave you," not as a command rooted in guilt, but as an invitation to freedom. Forgiveness is sacred. It's not rushed. It's not forced, but it's necessary, and you don't have to do it alone. God isn't asking you to be superhuman. He's asking you to hand him the weight, to say, I can't carry this anymore, but I don't want it to carry me either.
You may not feel ready. That's okay. But even the desire to forgive is already a step toward healing. What would happen if you finally laid this burden down? Not for them, but for you. Redemption is still possible. You thought it was too late, too messy, too broken, that the damage done was beyond repair, that maybe this was just your story now. Survive, endure, repeat. But God doesn't write tragedy as the final chapter. He writes resurrection. Not the kind that erases what happened, but the kind that rebuilds with what's left. You see, redemption isn't forgetting, it's reframing. It's looking at your scars and seeing soil, not shame. It's waking up one day and realizing, this wound no longer controls me. It shaped me, but it doesn't own me. That's redemption. Revelation 21:5 says, "Behold, I make all things new." All things. Not just the parts you handled well, not just the chapters you're proud of. All things. That includes the silence, the backslides, the years you thought were wasted, the parts of you that were mistreated, misunderstood, misused. God doesn't need a clean canvas to create beauty. He just needs surrender. A heart that says, I don't know how to fix this, but I'm done pretending I'm fine. You don't need to have it all together. You don't need a 5-step plan. You just need to open the door and let him come in. Not to judge, but to restore. Because what broke you will not define you. What left you will not limit you. And what hurt you will not have the last word. You are not beyond repair. You are not too far gone. You are not too damaged to be made new. Do you still believe something beautiful could come from all the pieces you thought were worthless?
The healing begins when you stop running. You've tried everything, starting over, cutting ties, filling the silence with noise, people, movement, anything to avoid what still lives quietly inside you. But healing doesn't meet you in the escape. It meets you in the stillness, in the moment you stop performing, stop fixing, stop hiding, and finally say, God, I don't know how to move forward, but I'm ready to stop pretending I already have. That's where it begins. Not with a grand revelation, not with a sudden breakthrough, but with honesty, with a whisper, here I am, and I want to be free. Because God doesn't need perfection, He wants presence. He's not asking for your cleanest version. He's not waiting for you to get it right. He just wants you, raw, tired, open. And slowly, in ways you may not even notice at first, the healing begins. You start to see yourself differently, not as someone who's always been left behind, but as someone who's finally coming home, to your soul, to your truth, to your worth. The pain didn't win, it just prepared the soil. And now, something new is growing. You don't need all the answers. You just need one sacred decision, to stop running and start returning. Can you feel it? The quiet invitation to be rebuilt, not despite your story, but because of it? If something in you whispered, this was for me, maybe that was God gently calling you back to yourself. You don't have to run anymore. You just have to answer. Like, share, and subscribe for more spiritual healing videos.